Hey YouTube, Mishka Valhalla here. So I have been gone a few days, but that's just because there's been a lot going on and my mind has been heavy. So I'm sure many of you understand. My heart is out there for all the people who have lost those they love or have been injured in the riots. My condolences to all of you who have suffered. But without any further ado, I definitely wanted to get into the runes for my channel. The first rune we're going to focus on in this video is the Rune Fehu, which is the rune of cattle and wealth, typically. But yeah, anyway, we're going to get straight into it. So when I think of the Rune Fehu, I think of the great cow Adumla. And for those of you that don't know Adumla was a great cow that fed the first giant emir in the beginning. For those of you that don't know it, you could look into the Eddas, and they tell of the story of Adumla, how she licked one of the first giants to continue the cycle of life, Buri. It's said in the mythology that she licked him from the ice, and then he emerged, and he was said to be the father of Bor, who was the father of Odin, Vilinve. When thinking of Adumla, I think of the cattle of the community. Back then our ancestors, they relied on their livestock, their crops, what they could pick, from the forests, what they could hunt. And, a lot of them had to rely on certain things such as the cow or their cattle in particular, because, these communities ate a lot of meat, they consumed a lot of milk, and as well as cheese, including butter. So, everything they got was from their cattle. So, and this was even mentioned in earlier sources by some Roman scholars. They mentioned the diet of the Germanic tribes. I can't remember which scholar, but those of you who remember can correct me. But he observed the Germanic tribes, and he looked at what they ate, and he basically said their main food consists of flesh, cheese, and milk. So it kind of makes sense when you think of what are they eating most of the time, if they're, if one of their runes, fe or fehu, translates to cattle. So I guess that could be important, if we were going to look at it from that perspective. Adumla, the cow, is the source of the community where we get all of our things. But back then, the point was to respect that source of life. Fehu is essentially what gives, and what has. Fehu is a very earthy rune, very, feely in my opinion. If you were to translate it in modern days, it could be a money rune or a finance rune, because back then cattle was that finance, cattle was that wealth. So in a way, Fehu represents that energy, all around us, that grows the things we need, within us and around us. It allows us to grow and to draw from our own strength and our own possessions, the things that we love, in order to achieve our greater goals. So in a way, to have the Rune Fehu on your side, is something that's very helpful, especially in this day and age where, at any point really, because currency obviously changed over time, but during these days, money can be scarce. So when it comes to rune magic or Galdur work, it could help to work with the Rune Fehu. When I'm doing divination with the Rune Fehu, if it's right side up, I would typically think that it has to do with wealth coming your way, or good fortune. Your hamingya, your luck is going to pay off, or your hard work, is going to, push the will of fate in your favor. It's a very good sign to receive Fehu right side up, just like any other rune right side up really. But I know some people don't read them reversed. I personally do. And reversed is when the rune is upside down. So Fehu, looking kind of like an F, would be an upside down F, and that would be the more, less desirable meaning, but it's more of like a warning in a way. The way I read the runes is I see pathways and opportunities, and the runes tell you what each choice will bring to the table. So if I go that way, this is what will happen to me. If I go that way, that is what will happen to me. I think I talked about it in my previous videos, about the runes and fate, but the way I interpret it is, if it's right side up, if Fehu's right side up, it's going to be a good sign for you, because that's going to lead to some future wealth and some future opportunities. But reversed, that's the next meaning we're going to get into. So if Fehu is reversed, it's gonna interpret a lot of financial hardship ahead, or you may have a crop failure in the future if you're a farmer, but that's if it's focused around obviously the well-being of your homestead. But again, when reading the runes, you also have to think of the context. So if it's reversed and it has to do with romance, which is a huge question that comes up a lot with my rune reading clients, is they basically ask, what's the problem with my relationship right now? Like, what am I doing wrong? If Fehu comes reversed, it's saying that your partner doesn't feel financially supported. Your partner probably isn't good for you and cares too much about the money. Like, let's say you're middle class and you're doing okay, but this person is too ambitious and they're unhappy with you solely on financial reasons. That could be a reason why Fehu is reversed. Again, it depends on the context. But that's why I don't ignore the reversed runes. Some people do, that's their practice, and more power to them, because I believe the runes will speak to us in any way they want. Because in my opinion, I believe that the runes are spirits of their own. They manifest in this reality as symbols, but in the other realms they manifest as who they truly are. Reflections and embodiments of the different layers of nature and reality. But that's just kind of how I view it. And of course, as guides to the web of weird, as guides to understanding fate and understanding one's destiny. Don't ignore the soil. Remember, when focusing on the Rune Fehu, remember to, when you want to bring this rune in, remember to be close to the earth. Remember to focus on the earth, the soil, how fertile it is, how fruitful it is, how promising it is, what the mother gives to us and we give back to her. That is the lesson of the old ways. We must not fear the earth. We must be willing to accept her soil, both in life and in death. And we must give back to her. That's the old way, and that's how it's seen in many, many cultures around the world, especially pre-Christian ones.